You're watching Bookmark, the 30-minute bookshelf, a series from Between Thoughts.
Today, we're doing something a bit special, part of the Bookmark 30-minute bookshelf series by Between Thoughts. We're diving into a really significant book, Thinking, Fast and Slow, by Daniel Kahneman.
Oh, absolutely. This one, it really changed the game, didn't it, in terms of how we understand, judgment, decision-making, basically how our own minds work.
Exactly. It gets right into the surprising ways our thinking operates. And the core idea, it's this distinction Kahneman makes between two ways of thinking. One he calls fast and intuitive, and the other slow and, well, deliberate.
Right. And what's so great about it, I think, is that it gives you this language, this framework for understanding the kind of systematic mistakes we all make, these biases. And honestly, the insights you get are often really surprising, but they have such practical uses, for your own choices or even understanding bigger things in society. It's like a tour guide for your brain.
A tour guide for your brain, I like that. We should definitely mention the author, Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize winner.
Right.
His work, a lot of it with his longtime collaborator, Amos Tversky, it basically built the foundations for behavioral economics, cognitive psychology.
Huge impact. And he has this amazing ability to take decades of really complex research and make it feel, well, understandable and relevant to everyday life. That's why his voice is so important here.
Okay, so let's dig in. The absolute core of the book, as you said, is these two systems of thinking. Can you maybe introduce us to them? System one first.
Sure. So imagine you have these two sort of characters running the show in your head. System one is the fast one. It's automatic, intuitive, feels effortless. It's always running in the background.
Like instinct.
Yeah, kind of. Think about reacting instantly to a car swerving or understanding a simple sentence like, pass the salt. Or even that quick flash of recognition when you see a face. That's all system one. It's also really good at spotting simple patterns, like if you hear a description of someone very shy and detail-oriented, system one might immediately flash librarian, without any actual statistical thought. It just integrates info super quickly to give you a coherent, fast take.
Got it. So it's our autopilot, almost, always on, making quick judgments, handling the routine stuff. What about system two then?
System two is the complete opposite. It's slow, it's effortful, it's logical, and very deliberate. This is the system you have to consciously engage. It requires focus, attention, real mental work.
Okay, examples.
Think about solving a tricky math problem like 17 times 24, or trying to remember all the capital cities that start with the letter N, or consciously counting every F on this page.
I can feel my brain switching gears just thinking about doing that. It takes work.
Exactly. System two is what allows you to follow complex rules, compare different options carefully, make deliberate choices, and crucially, work with statistics, something system one is pretty bad at.
So how do they work together? Does system two just step in when system one messes up?
Well, it's more of a continuous interaction. System one is constantly churning out suggestions, impressions, feelings, intuitions. It just fires them off to system two.
And system two?
System two can then either just nod along, basically endorse the suggestion, or it can step in, analyze it, and potentially override it. But, and this is key, system two requires effort. Constant effort to stay engaged.
Ah, the effort part. I'm guessing system two doesn't always want to put in the work.
You guessed it. Kahneman calls system two lazy. It prefers to conserve energy. So a lot of the time, unless something really flags a problem or the stakes are high, system two will just default to what system one suggests. It takes the path of least resistance.
Okay, lazy system two. That feels relatable, unfortunately. Wow. And this effort, it's actually measurable, right? Like physically.
Yeah, it is. When you engage in demanding system two tasks, your pupils dilate, your heart rate increases. Kahneman talks about experiments where researchers could literally tell when someone gave up on a hard mental task just by watching their pupils shrink back down. It's a real physical exertion.
Wow. And this effort can even make us miss things, like that gorilla experiment.
Exactly like that. That's a great connection. When system two is working at full capacity, focused intensely on one thing, you can become temporarily blind to other things, even obvious things happening right in front of you, like someone in a gorilla suit walking through a basketball game. Intense focus has a cost.
So this lazy system two, combined with system one's quick, sometimes flawed suggestions, that sounds like a recipe for predictable mistakes.
Precisely. And that leads us directly into heuristics and biases. System 1 uses these mental shortcuts or heuristics to make quick judgments. They're usually efficient, but they can lead us into systematic errors or biases.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these common pitfalls. You mentioned the halo effect.
Right, the halo effect. This is where your first impression of one characteristic, say someone seems really confident and articulate, spills over and influences your judgment of their other characteristics.
So you might think because they sound smart, their actual ideas must be smart.
Exactly. Even if the content is weak, the confident delivery creates a positive halo, biasing your evaluation. It's why charismatic leaders, or even just attractive people, often get the benefit of the doubt on things completely unrelated. We let one positive trait color the whole picture.
Definitely seen that happen. What's another big one? Maybe the availability heuristic.
Availability. This is a huge one. It's basically our tendency to judge the frequency or probability of something based on how easily examples come to mind.
So if I can think of lots of examples easily, I assume it's common.
Pretty much. Kahneman gives the example of the letter K. If you ask people whether more English words start with K or have K as the third letter, most say start with K. Why? Because it's much easier to think of words starting with K, kangaroo, kitchen, kind.
But that's not actually true.
Nope. Statistically, K appears much more often as the third letter, but retrieving those words, like acknowledge, ask, is harder for our memory. So ease of retrieval gets mistaken for frequency.
And this plays out in real life too, right? Like with news stories.
Absolutely. Traumatic, vivid events like plane crashes or, say, scandals involving politicians stick in our minds. They become highly available. This can lead us to overestimate the risk of flying or the prevalence of corruption in one group compared to another, just because those examples are easier to recall than more mundane, statistically common occurrences.
So our memory's quirks heavily influence our sense of reality. What about priming? How does that fit in?
Priming is fascinating. It's part of how System 1 works through associative activation. Basically, seeing or hearing one idea triggers related ideas in your mind, like a ripple effect.
Like word association.
Yeah, but subtler and often unconscious. Kahneman uses the famous EAT SOP example. If you've just seen the word eat, you're much more likely to complete SOP as SOUP. But if you've just seen wash, you'd likely complete it as SOAP.
Ah, the first word primes you for a related concept.
Exactly. And this constant associative activation helps create coherence. But it also means subtle cues in our environment can influence our thoughts, feelings, and even actions without us realizing it. This connects to something called cognitive ease.
Cognitive ease, what's that?
It's the feeling that things are going smoothly, effortlessly. System 1 likes cognitive ease. Things that are familiar, repeated often, presented clearly, or even just put you in a good mood tend to feel true or good simply because they're easier to process.
So familiarity breeds belief.
In a way, yes. Kahneman notes, familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. If you hear a statement repeated often enough, even a false one like, the body temperature of a chicken is 144 degrees, it starts to feel familiar and therefore more likely to be true. This creates illusions of truth.
That's a bit scary. And mood affects this too.
Definitely. A good mood tends to make us more intuitive, more creative, but also more gullible and more reliant on System 1. A bad mood, conversely, often triggers more vigilant, analytical thinking, engaging System 2 more.
Interesting. So all these shortcuts and influences, System 1 seems to build stories very quickly based on whatever's available. Is that WYSIAD?
Exactly. WYSIAD, what you see is all there is. This is a fundamental aspect of System 1. It doesn't naturally pause to consider information it doesn't have. It constructs the best possible story using only the information currently active in your mind.
So if I tell you Mindik is intelligent and strong,
my System 1 might immediately jump to, she'll be a good leader. It doesn't automatically ask, but is she corrupt? Is she visionary? What else do I need to know? It works with what's right there, creating coherence even if the data is thin. This leads to overconfidence based on limited evidence.
Which seems like a perfect lead-in to judging people or situations based on stereotypes, like representativeness.
Precisely. Representativeness is judging the probability of something based on how much it resembles or represents a particular stereotype or prototype in our minds, while often ignoring the underlying statistical base rates.
The librarian example again.
That's a classic one. The description of Steve as shy and tidy fits the stereotype of a librarian very well. So System 1 says probably a librarian, but it completely ignores the statistical fact that there are vastly more farmers or salesmen than librarians. The base rate is ignored because the description feels so representative.
And the famous Linda problem. That really highlights this, doesn't it?
Oh, the Linda problem is brilliant. Linda is described as single, outspoken, bright, concerned with discrimination and social justice. Then people are asked which is more probable. A, Linda is a bank teller, or B, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement.
And most people choose B, right? Even though logically B is a subset of A, so it has to be less probable.
Exactly. Somewhere between 85–90% of university students get this wrong. Why? Because bank teller and feminist feels much more representative of the description of Linda, even though it violates basic probability rules. System 1's desire for a coherent, representative story trumps System 2's logic. It shows how powerful this heuristic is.
Wow. See, our intuition is really bad with statistics sometimes. What about randomness? Do we see patterns where there aren't any?
We absolutely do. We have a strong bias against randomness. We crave causality and patterns. Think of the hot hand in basketball, the belief that a player is more likely to make their next shot after making a few in a row. Statistically, it's largely an illusion. Random streaks happen. This ties into another crucial concept, regression to the mean.
Regression to the mean. That sounds statistical.
It is, but it explains so much everyday experience. It's the simple fact that extreme performances tend to be followed by performances closer to the average. Kahneman tells a great story about training Israeli Air Force flight instructors. The instructors insisted that criticizing pilots after a bad maneuver led to improvement, while praising them after a good one led to worse performance.
So punishment works and praise backfire.
That's what they believed. But Kahneman pointed out it was likely just regression to the mean. An exceptionally good maneuver is often partly due to luck. The next one is likely to be closer to the pilot's average. An exceptionally bad one is often partly bad luck. The next one is also likely to regress towards the average. The praise and blame were probably irrelevant to the subsequent performance change.
So we assign cause where it's just statistical fluctuation.
Very often, yes. It happens with golf scores, children's test results, even the height of parents and children. Very tall parents tend to have children who are tall, but usually a bit less tall than them, closer to the average. It's a statistical reality our intuition finds hard to grasp.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift a bit. How do these biases affect our choices, especially when there's risk involved? This gets into prospect theory, right?
Yes, prospect theory, which won Kahneman the Nobel, developed with Tversky, it was revolutionary because it showed how people actually make decisions under risk, which often contradicts traditional economic models of the rational actor.
Now, what's the core idea?
A few key things. First, people evaluate outcomes based on gains and losses relative to a reference point, usually the status quo, not based on their final state of wealth.
Okay, so it's about the change, not the total amount.
Exactly. And second, and perhaps most famously, loss aversion. Put simply, losses loom larger than gains. We feel the pain of a loss roughly twice as much as we feel the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Twice as much.
Wow.
So losing $100 feels way worse than gaining $100 feels good.
That's the general finding, yeah. The exact ratio varies, maybe 1.5 to 2.5 times, but the asymmetry is strong and consistent. You dislike losing more than you like winning.
How does this show up?
Loads of ways. Think about the endowment effect. Once you own something, even a simple coffee mug given to you minutes ago, you value it more highly than you would have paid to get it. Why? Because giving it up feels like a loss. And that loss hurts more than the potential gain of money.
So that's why selling stuff feels harder than buying sometimes.
Precisely. It also explains why taxi drivers might paradoxically work longer hours on slow days to reach their daily income target, avoiding the loss of not making it, and quit early on busy days once they've hit their target gain. Or why professional golfers are often more careful trying to avoid a bogey, a loss relative to par, than they are aggressive trying to get a birdie, a gain.
And in negotiations.
Loss aversion makes negotiations really tough, especially if concessions are needed. Framing something as a concession, a loss for one side, makes it much harder to accept than framing it as a gain for the other. When the pie seems to be shrinking, a loss aversion makes agreement incredibly difficult.
This idea of framing seems critical then. How else does the way information is presented affect our choices?
Hugely. This is the power of framing effects. The exact same objective information presented differently can lead to completely different choices.
Can you give an example?
Classic one from Kahneman and Tversky. Imagine a disease outbreak expected to kill 600 people. Option A saves 200 lives for sure. Option B has a 13 chance of saving all 600 and a 23 chance of saving no one. What do most people choose?
Option A sounds safer, saving 200 for sure.
Right, most people are risk-averse when choices are framed in terms of gains, lives saved. Now, consider the same scenario, framed differently. Option C means 400 people will definitely die. Option D has a 13 chance that nobody will die and a 23 chance that all 600 will die.
Okay, now, option C feels bad, 400 dying for sure. Option D offers a chance. I might lean towards D there.
And most people do. They become risk-seeking when choices are framed in terms of losses, lives lost. But notice, option A and C are identical outcomes. 200 saved, 400 die, and option B and D are identical outcomes. Just changing the frame from gains to losses flips the preference.
That's incredible. So how you word something can completely change the decision.
Completely. It shows we don't have stable preferences. They're highly dependent on the frame. Think about expressing risks. Saying 1,000 homicides sounds much more alarming and impactful than saying the rate is 0.00036%, even if they represent the same underlying data. Vivid numbers grab System 1 more than abstract percentages.
The organ donation example fits here too, doesn't it? Opt-in versus opt-out.
Perfect example. Countries with an opt-out system, you're assumed to be a donor unless you explicitly say no, have dramatically higher donation rates than countries with opt-in systems. You have to actively sign up. The default frame has enormous power because System 2 often doesn't bother you to override it.
Okay, so our choices are shaped by gains versus losses and how things are framed. The book also talks about two different selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. That sounds intriguing.
It really is. Kahneman argues we have these two perspectives on our well-being. The experiencing self lives in the present moment, feeling pleasure or pain second by second. The remembering self is the one that looks back, evaluates experiences, tells the story of our lives, and makes future decisions.
And they don't always agree.
Not at all. The remembering self is heavily biased by two things: the peak end rule and duration neglect.
Peak end rule and duration neglect. Okay, what are those?
The peak end rule means that our memory of an experience, how good or bad it was overall, is dominated by how we felt at its most intense moment, the peak, and how we felt right at the end.
And duration neglect.
That means the length of the experience has surprisingly little impact on our memory of it. A mediocre experience that lasts a long time isn't necessarily remembered as twice as bad as one half as long. The remembering self just doesn't seem to add up the total amount of good or bad feeling over time.
Could you illustrate that?
The famous cold hand experiment does it perfectly. People put one hand in painfully cold water for 60 seconds. Later, they put the other hand in the same cold water for 60 seconds, plus another 30 seconds where the water was slightly less cold, but still unpleasant.
So the second experience was objectively worse, longer duration of pain.
Objectively worse for the experiencing self, yes. But when asked which trial they'd prefer to repeat, a significant majority chose the longer one. Why? Because the end was slightly less painful, creating a better memory according to the peak end rule, overriding the fact that the total duration of pain was greater.
Wow. So our memories trick us into choosing more pain just because the ending felt a bit better.
Essentially, yes. The remembering self is the one making the choices for the future, and it prioritizes its own potentially flawed memories over the actual lived experience. It raises questions like, when you go on vacation, are you optimizing for the experience itself or for creating good memories like taking photos constantly instead of just being present?
That's a really good point. It connects to well-being too, doesn't it? How we judge our happiness.
Definitely. Kahneman distinguishes between experienced well-being, how you feel moment to moment, often measured by things like mood or stress levels during the day, and life satisfaction, your overall judgment when you step back and think about your life.
And the remembering self handles life satisfaction.
Largely, yes. And this is where the focusing illusion comes in. Kahneman states it simply. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you are thinking about it.
Meaning?
When you focus your attention on one specific aspect of your life, say your income, your health, or where you live, that aspect temporarily seems disproportionately important in determining your overall happiness or life satisfaction.
Like thinking moving to California will make you much happier because of the weather.
Classic example. People think Californians must be happier because they focus on the climate difference when asked. But when you actually measure experienced well-being day to day, there's often little difference. We overestimate the impact of single factors because our remembering self focuses on them when making the judgment, falling prey to the focusing illusion.
So many ways our minds lead us astray. It seems like we're overly confident in our judgments too.
Hugely. That brings us to the illusion of validity and hindsight bias. We often feel confident in our judgments and predictions even when the evidence is weak or unreliable. That's the illusion of validity. And then after an event happens, it suddenly seems like it was predictable all along. That's hindsight bias, the I knew it all along effect.
Which makes us feel like we understand the past better than we actually did.
Exactly. And that false sense of understanding the past fuels the illusion that we can reliably predict the future. We construct neat stories about why things happened, ignoring the massive role of chance and unforeseen factors.
So if human judgment is so flawed, what's the alternative? Algorithms.
Well, the evidence is pretty compelling. Decades of research, starting with Paul Meehl back in the 50s, show that simple statistical algorithms often outperform human experts in making predictions across a huge range of domains.
Like what?
Medical diagnoses, predicting marital stability, evaluating loan applications, forecasting business success, even picking stocks. Simple formulas based on a few key variables are often more accurate than the intuitive judgments of seasoned professionals. The Apgar School for Newborns is a great example of a simple, successful algorithm.
So should we just ditch human intuition entirely?
Not necessarily. Kahneman makes a crucial distinction. There's genuine expert intuition, developed through thousands of hours of practice in a regular, predictable environment with clear feedback. Think of master chess players, experienced firefighters, or skilled nurses recognizing subtle signs. Their system one has learned valid cues.
Okay, so that's different from...
Different from pseudo-experts operating in highly complex, unpredictable environments, like stock pickers or political pundits making long-term forecasts. In those domains, the illusion of skill is rampant, and algorithms tend to do better because they consistently apply rules without being swayed by misleading intuitions or biases. True experts often know the limits of their knowledge.
So recognizing the environment, whether it's regular enough to support intuition, is key. What's the big takeaway then for improving our decisions, knowing all this?
A huge practical takeaway is the value of the outside view. When forecasting or planning something especially complex projects prone to the planning fallacy, resist the urge to focus only on the specifics of your unique case, the inside view. Instead, deliberately seek out statistical information about similar cases. What was the average cost overrun for projects like this? How long did they typically take? This distributional information, the outside view, forces you to anchor your prediction in reality, countering optimistic biases and WISIAD. It engages System 2 with relevant data.
That seems like a really powerful technique. So understanding these two systems, the biases, the heuristics, it gives us tools.
Absolutely. It gives you this incredibly useful lens for understanding why people, including yourself, think and act the way they do. Recognizing these patterns of error is the first step towards potentially mitigating them and making slightly better, more reasoned choices. It's not about becoming perfectly rational robots, but about being more aware of the predictable ways our minds can fool us.
It really has been eye-opening, just grasping the constant dance between that fast, intuitive System 1 and the slower, effortful System 2. It changes how you see everyday decisions, doesn't it?
It really does.
And knowing about things like loss aversion or the availability heuristic or WISIAD, it feels like we're better equipped maybe to pause and question those gut feelings sometimes, to ask, okay, wait, is my System 1 jumping to a conclusion here?
That's the hope, isn't it? To bring a bit more System 2 scrutiny when it really matters.
And so maybe the final thought here is, the book shows our intuition is incredibly powerful, a marvel in many ways, but it's definitely flawed, prone to these systematic errors. So the real challenge isn't trying to get rid of intuition, right?
No, not at all.
It's more about learning when to trust that gut feeling, maybe in those areas where we have true expertise, and when to consciously hit the brakes, engage that effortful System 2, and do the harder work of critical thinking. Knowing the difference seems key.
Well put. Knowing when to trust and when to question. That's the journey.
Thank you so much for walking us through Thinking Fast and Slow. It's given us a lot to, well, think about. And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration helps you navigate your own thinking a little differently. Remember, you can find more discussions like this in the Bookmark 30-Minute Bookshelf series by Between Thoughts. Until next time, keep thinking fast and slow.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through today's book. This was Bookmark, your 30-minute bookshelf summary, brought to you by Between Thoughts. We hope it brought you clarity, calm, and a little spark of inspiration. New episodes drop regularly, so stay tuned, stay curious, and keep turning the pages one thought at a time. Until next time, take care and keep growing.